right, so welcome to Vortex Garage. Once again, we've got a WJ in the shop. This one is the 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the 4-liter inline 6, and it also has a leaking radiator. So what we're going to do today is go ahead and strip this thing down and get the radiator removed. And what we assume, based on the diagnostic, and we'll show you with the other camera, is a leaking side tank on the radiator. Now these radiators have plastic side tanks and an aluminum core, and it's not uncommon for them to kind of fail along that joint here. So I'll grab the other camera and show you, but I'm pretty sure we've got a leaking side tank on this, so we're going to strip it down and get that radiator pulled out. Now there's probably plenty of guides that show you how to remove a radiator on a WJ, so we're not going to do a super big, long, in-depth video. We're just going to show you the basics and maybe show you some tips and tricks on how to get one removed without having to do certain things like recovering the AC. In fact, although the book calls for removing the condenser, which involves opening the AC lines, and you have to recover the Freon and then vacuum it all out and put it back in when you're done, there's a way to do it without pulling out the condenser. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but we'll walk you through how to do that. So why don't we go ahead and get started. First thing we got to do is pretty much tear the whole front of the Jeep apart, but it's not that hard. If you look up underneath, you can see that most of the wetness is coming on the side tank there, and a lot of it's dried out. When it actually blew, you can see there's some residual wet along the sway bar link there. It was actually spraying out onto the suspension components. So I don't believe it's not the drain leaking. We checked that. It's actually leaking from further up, and it's not the upper hose. The upper hose is dry, so pretty much the leak was starting about halfway down the tank, that side tank there, and that's why we think we've got a split side tank. At least that's what we're assuming. And on this side, hopefully you can see everything was pretty much nice and dry on this side. So we're going to go ahead and remove the radiator, and then we'll inspect it closer when it's out, but we're pretty sure that's our issue. We've got a split side tank. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and remove the front grille. This is just going to pop out. It's going to have some clips that go around it, and you can kind of reach in, just basically pull this up, and then the whole thing will slide out. This one, been off a couple times, been off recently, so it wasn't hard to pop off. But basically, you see here, you've got this clip that goes up over this piece, and then you've got these here. So pretty simple, just reach back, peel it forward, pop it out, there you go. All right, so you've got to get your headlights out, pretty simple. You've got a 7mm bolt on top, it's pretty long. So just get your socket on, zing it out. Okay, so pull that out, set it aside so you don't lose it. Now just take your headlight assembly and you're gonna just basically pop it out. It's got some ball and socket attachments in the back. So if this hasn't been out in a while, it's gonna take some pulling on it to get it. If it's been out recently, like say maybe 6 months ago when you did the radiator, pops out pretty easy. All right, so once it's out, go ahead and pop off your retainers for your wiring on your low and high beams. Okay, now you could label them if you really want to, but you don't have to, because your low beam is going to have a single piece right here, and it has a little item in there that kind of keys it in. Whereas your high beam will have two. So it's pretty hard to mix these up. And they also kind of lay in the right spot when you have everything out. So I've never bothered to label them. They always go back where they need to go. To get the bottom lights out, you just twist until they pop out. Twist to unlock. To the left, pop out. Twist to the left to unlock, pop out. Now if you want, you can go ahead and remove these. You're going to want to not touch them too much so they don't burn out preemptively. But to be honest with you, this is a really good time to go ahead and swap these out with a new set. Make sure you got some fresh lights in there because you've got your headlight assembly out. Whoop. Don't want to lose our bolt. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and remove our bumper cover. All right, now on the bumper cover, right up underneath here is should be a 10mm bolt if I remember correctly. So you're just going to want to come up here. Get that loose. A ratcheting wrench works good. A ratchet will usually fit in there as well. I think a 1/4-inch ratchet might be your best bet. How long is this bolt? Come on. There it is. I got it. Look at that. Look at that bolt. There you go. We'll set that right there. Mention the cable ties. So basically, if you've still got the plastic push pins in, come along here with the right tool, the panel popper. Pop these out from the splash shield. And if they break, you'll probably end up putting cable ties on them when you do it the next time. So if that's the case, and you have done that already, come in here and just snip your cable ties. If your tire gets in the way, you can always just go in and turn it out of the way. There we go. All right, so our splash shield's loose. Now our bumper's loose here. We'll go do the other side. Same deal on the other side. Let's see how many cable ties we got here. Well, here's our plastic piece. So here's our push pin. Here's our cable ties on the bottom. Zip ties, whatever you want to call them. There we go. Oh, come up underneath. A lot of people say that doing a WJ radiator is a pain. And I'm not going to lie, it's not the simplest thing in the world, because you pretty much do have to disassemble the whole front end of the vehicle. But to be fair, it's not that bad getting this stuff apart. And it all goes back on pretty simple. So that being said, I'm sure I'll be cursing at some point in time during this job. All right, now that that's out, we've got, I think, 3 push pins on the bottom. We'll go ahead and get those. And we should also have a few up here on the top. Okay, so these are the types of push pins you're going to see. And they basically have a slot you can put a flathead screwdriver in. It's like a plastic rivet almost. You basically can pry this piece out. You want to do this very carefully, especially if it's cold out. This plastic can get brittle. Okay. Then I like to take a needle nose plier. Just come in here and grab that piece. And once you pull this out a certain distance, it'll basically release this and it'll pop out. All right, so just real quick to show you, this is basically like a plastic rivet here. So as you pull out this inner part, it allows this to compress and pop out. And as you were to push this in, that basically locks this in an expanded way so it'll lock in your part and won't come out. So it's a removable plastic rivet basically. So try not to break these, but you can pick up new ones at a parts store if you need to. And basically you got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those up top, and then I think you have 2 or 3 on the bottom. All right, here's the ones that are up underneath, and they're very similar. Just take a screwdriver, pop them down. It's hard to do one-handed. I'm basically kind of propping the camera up, and I'm getting coolant on the lens. That's wonderful. Okay, so there's the inner centerpiece, and then you come and, whoops, pop out that piece. All right, so there's 3 of them down here. Do those, and then we're going to be all set to go ahead and remove our part. Oh, I did almost forget one thing. If you've got fog lamps, go ahead and go around back and get those disconnected. It's pretty simple. You've got your splash shield already out of the way. So just reach around. Whoop, pop them loose. In case you're wondering what this is, this particular Jeep was towed behind an RV at one point, and this was the emergency release went to something called a brake buddy. So this would hook up to the trailer hitch on the RV, and if it ever broke loose of the RV, it would pop this pin out, make an electrical connection, and cause the pneumatic brake buddy in there to push out and apply the brakes and basically emergency stop the vehicle if this thing ever came loose when it was rolling in neutral behind an RV. So kind of a neat system. So, whoops, that's what that's there for. All right, so once you've validated, you've got all of your plastic rivets out, you've got your fog lights disconnected, your 10mm bolts on either side done, your splash shield plastic rivets pulled out. Everything should be clear. You're ready to pull off the bumper cover. So go ahead and grab either side of it, support it underneath and up top if you can. And you might have a little bit of trouble here. You just got a little push area here. It's a little like kind of locking clip. Just sort of push that down. It'll pop loose a little like that. Go ahead and grab your bumper cover. Slide it right off. That's it. All right, so we've got our bumper cover, grille, and headlights removed. And before we continue on with the rest of the disassembly, just a quick note. I actually removed the battery on this before I started, and you're going to want to at least disconnect your battery cables. I pulled it out because it's nice and simple. And the way these cables are on these WJs, they really like to lay on top of the battery, and I don't want it popping up while I'm working on stuff and shorting out. So nice and simple. Took 10 extra seconds to pop the battery out. All right, let's go ahead and keep pressing on. All right, so taking a look at our Jeep, as soon as we got the bumper cover off, the one thing I noticed is this thing had a little minor front end damage. You could see this through the bumper cover, which actually didn't look bad at all. The license plate was caved in a bit. But look at this piece, this metal support. It's pretty well caved in here. And if we look back here, it's pushed in dangerously close to the AC condenser. So it's entirely plausible that whatever happened here, and I don't know the history of what happened, but whatever happened here could have contributed to our issues we're having with our radiator. But at any rate, let's strip it apart the rest of the way. We'll take a look and do some diagnostics, figure out what we got. All right, up next, we're going to go ahead and remove this plastic piece right here. Now, a couple quick things. First off, you're going to want to remove this sensor right here. This is your temperature sensor for your readout in the dash. Make sure there's nothing else that you need to remove. When this does come off, we're going to have to feed our light harnesses through. But this itself is held on by a bunch of T30 bolts, T30 Torx. And hopefully you're not like me and recently worked on a Mercury Mountaineer front drive shaft with T30 bolts that are Loctited from the factory and proceeded to ruin even your impact T30s. But luckily even broken ones seem to fit. So we're going to go ahead and get this removed. Let's make sure. Oh yeah, piece of cake. All right, before I get too much further, let's come around back and go ahead and unscrew this bit right here. That's probably an 8mm. Let's find out if I'm right. I think it's a 7 or 6. What do you think the chances are I can fit this back here? With my battery removed, I might be able to. Let's see. Oh yeah. Ah, give it a wobble. No such luck. Try a wobble. Assuming it's a 7mm. Yep, 7mm. And a wobble worked good. Okay, so pop that out of the way. Come on, get in there. There you go. And we'll put our screw back in so we don't lose it. All right, and we'll continue removing all these T30 Torx. Just got to find them all. So that's 3. Something there. 4. 5. I thought there was one here. What is that? 6. 7. 8. I guess there's 8. Yep. Must be 8. So this little thing in the corner here is a little bit annoying. It basically kind of just slides up and in, so you got to basically lift it up and then out, and then it'll pop loose. Let me show you on this one again. It's this little thing here. It makes putting it back in a little bit of a pain too. Basically lift it up, and you got far enough, pop out, and there you go. All right, we're going to go ahead and pull this off, and you'll see as I do it, it's a little bit tough, and they only go one way, but you can feed this through. Do all these first. This one first. Now this one, see if I remember how to do this. Do all those. All right, now the only one I got left is this one. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the bulb. Make life easier. And then this will basically go just one way. It'll fit just barely. But it'll fit. And you just got to find the perfect angle to get it out. It's a pain. I really wanted to get it on the first try and look awesome, but not today. There we go. All right. All right, up next, we're going to remove this piece right here. So first off, to do that, we're going to need to remove our burped. All right, the final bit of disassembly we're going to do up front is this piece right here. Very simple to remove. You got two bolts on either side and it's going to slide right out. But first, you got to go ahead and remove your hood latch. I bet you they're 13. I'm guessing. I'm going straight to the 13. All right, I won. I won. Okay, 1, 2. There we go. That's one hood latch out of the way. And go ahead and put these out. There we go. And then we'll drop the nuts. Store the nuts on this piece so we don't lose them. So don't take these off. These are actually pretty valuable to keep on. What we'll probably do is tighten them a bit. They shouldn't be this loose. I would imagine that's from this crash damage. But these are actually very valuable in allowing us to continue without removing the condenser. We'll show you that a little later on. Zoom these out. All right, there we go. If you want, you can just flip it over and you got a nice mustache for your vehicle. So, or just toss it aside because you don't need it. At least right now. And again, my favorite thing to do is throw the bolts in where they came from. That way I won't lose them. One more item. Let's pop off this air tube right here. And looks like it already detached from wherever it was hooked up. I guess I forgot about it. But we'll go ahead and spin it up and out. And we'll set that off to the side for now. All right. And we're getting there. Now, we haven't got to the hard part yet, which is the shroud bolts. And I got to remember if I even put the bottom one on because they're such a pain. But basically the steering box is in the way, so you need a really small wrench. You don't get a lot of movement on it. But first things first, we have our drain plug in the back of our radiator. I'm going to go ahead and get a little piece of hose that you can slide over the end of it into a container. I'm going to drain out whatever's left in the cooling system. All right, so I had a great plan to use a little piece of rubber hose and run that straight into our old container and capture all this fluid. But instead, I elected to make a mess. Well, all right, I didn't really elect to. As I opened the drain, even with the hose connected, it just started pouring out everywhere. So I don't know if we've got a split radiator or what, or if our side side tank's just so bad under there. But at any rate, we're just going to capture it in this kind of wide drain pan, clean up the mess that we make, and we'll be done with it. And this is a good time if you've got pets or animals around. Keep them out of this area until you clean it up, because this stuff's pretty poisonous to pets, and they're attracted to the sweet smell. So don't let your dog, cats, or anything like that get into this stuff. Clean up after yourself, and make sure you take care of this stuff as you need to. All right, so while that's draining, we can go ahead and get ready to remove more of our parts. We'll get this rubber overflow hose taken off. Don't mind this. I put a little bit of blue RTV because I found that it wanted to pop out of this plastic channel too easy. So I just put a little bit of RTV to secure it in. This. We can go ahead and take our upper radiator hose off and get that out of the way. But really, before we do too much else, the next thing we're going to have to come to grips with is removal of our fan shroud. And unfortunately, it certainly looks like it has to come out because we're not removing the condenser. So there's just not going to be enough room to slide it past it. And unfortunately, that in this one, which has the mechanical fan, that involves taking the mechanical fan off. If you've got the hydraulic fan, I don't know if your life's easier or worse, because then you've got to take the hydraulic fittings off and get your hydraulic fan removed. We do have the electric fan in this one as well, so we need to remember when we get our shroud ready to come off that we disconnect the power for that. So you can see this is our connector for our electric fan. And I'll see if I can reach in where you can see it, but this is basically the locking piece right here. So that slides off to the side, and once that's done, you can get your piece in there to get that disconnected. So you want to slide that way to unlock it, and then you should be able to just stick like a flat blade screwdriver in there, push the pin in, and get those separated. All right, so we got the electric fan disconnected. And by the way, your headlight harness, if you don't want to mess with this and have it dangling, pretty simple. You can just disconnect it right here. It's got the same type of sliding locking pin, but I just pass them through. I don't know why. All right, so a couple tips and tricks on our radiator removal. So of course, we've got our lower radiator hose removed from the radiator itself. We've got same with the upper. But real quick, there's a couple different setups on transmission coolers on WJs. This particular one has, which you'd find if you had the tow package, which is strange because mine actually has a tow hitch, whereas this one doesn't, and mine doesn't use this setup. So I believe this is the higher capacity transmission cooler. As you can see here, these are the transmission cooler lines. This is our AC compressor. But as you'll notice, the vanes down here, look at how they're spaced and how they look, but look up here. This section right here is actually your trans cooler. This section down here is your AC condenser. Other WJs will actually have a section of the radiator that's dedicated to the trans cooler rather than utilizing this setup here. So that's the two flavors you'll see. You'll either have your transmission lines running into the condenser up here, or you'll have them actually bolting into the radiator itself. Now I've put caps on this one when I installed it, just because I didn't want anything getting in there, but you'll have some unused connectors on the radiator if you have this setup right here. So I'll actually tell you, I think this setup makes it actually harder to remove a radiator because you have these lines in the way of your lower shroud bolt, which is down there and kind of right where your steering box is. So what I like to do is you can remove these and then you can move them around a little bit more, and you will lose a little bit of trans fluid when you do that, but really not much, and just be ready to catch it. And anyway, you can go ahead and move these out of the way from your shroud. We'll show you what they look like in the back. Just remember, have some ATF +4. You want to top that transmission off perfectly, because we all know they can be really finicky with transmission fluid levels on a WJ. Anyway, let's come up underneath and I'll show you really fast. So there's our radiator hose. I just pulled it out of the way. And hopefully you can kind of see up there how the transmission lines sit within little brackets in the shroud. So that's what makes it kind of tough to pull your shroud in and out. And you want to make sure you get those loose. But if you look up there, it's almost impossible to get a camera view on. But up in there is actually where you're going to have a bolt on your shroud. You see that top line on the frame there, that is actually going right over where the bolt is. So imagine trying to get a socket on there. First of all, that's impossible. And then try to get a wrench on there. You can get about a quarter turn. So when you have to get it off, it's gonna be a pain. When you finally get it off, I'm gonna be honest with you, I never put it back on. I made sure the others were tight. Everything's so tight under here anyway. The shroud wasn't moving. The shroud locks in on the bottom. So I did not replace that one and have not had any problems. Of course, we do have a leaking radiator, but I think that it's from other causes. And this side is perfectly fine. So, you know, your mileage may vary. Do what you want. But I can tell you on this one, I'm not going to have to wrestle it this time because it's not there. So, all right. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do is get ready to take this off, and then we'll go ahead and unbolt. Let's see, I guess we'll have to unbolt this piece, this thing, this piece here, you're not going to have to worry about that, but we're going to have to take that off. But then these are the main bolts that hold in the radiator. But we have to get the shroud off, and this particular WJ has the mechanical fan, not the hydraulic fan, so we're going to need to come in here and get that big, use an adjustable wrench, get this loose. And we're going to have to hold our water pump pulley as we're doing that. So you can get a pulley holder tool, which I do have, and that's pretty much the best way you're going to do this. You should be able to leave the belt on. I'm not doing the water pump. If you can kind of tell, it's a little bit shinier than usual because we did the water pump last time we did this, and also had to replace our coolant neck up here as well. All right, so let me go ahead and get our mechanical fan taken off. We'll prepare to get everything else taken out, and we should be able to remove our shroud. And then once our shroud's out, we should be able to go ahead and slide out the radiator. This is our little pulley holder doodad. And now we're going to try to... that's so nasty. Try to fit it on with that thing. Alright, so we got our pulley holder installed. I just got an adjustable wrench I'm going to try to fit on here, just so it'll fit with our pulley holder in place. And then I'm going to try to... there we go. Now, yep, got it. Okay, so I got our fan loose. So it's one big nut. I use an adjustable wrench, and looks to be about 1 3/8 inches possibly, maybe 35 millimeter. Actually, it looks like what the measurement is. So we use this as a pulley holder. It goes on 2 of the bolts on our water pump pulley, and basically do that and it'll hold it. And that worked pretty good. We're going to need that when we put it back on. But basically, now our fan is loose enough, we can just spin it off. And it's probably hard to see, but that's all right. But you'll see it threading off the water pump there. Let me show you the other camera. Okay, as you can see, it's now threading off our water pump. So we'll get this off, and we'll just lay it inside the shroud for now, and we'll take it out as a unit. There we go. Okay, so we'll just lay it in the shroud like that. When we get the shroud loose, we'll pull the fan and shroud together out. Okay, let's get our shroud bolts out. Never ceases to amaze me how annoying this thing is to work on. I kind of forgot one more thing. So even on this side, this shroud bolt, it's not too bad, obviously. It's easy to get to. But if you look down at the one in the bottom, I'll try to zoom in on it. Look at how it hits that frame rail very close. So it's really hard to get a wrench or a ratchet on that because of its proximity there. So what we'll probably do, we'll go ahead and loosen the attachment nut here, and before we take anything else off, that'll allow us to rock our radiator forward. So hopefully just by rocking it forward a bit, that'll gain us the crucial millimeters we're going to need to go ahead and get something on there. Take these out. Take this one out next. All right. Hopefully that'll give us just the amount we need to get a 1/4 inch ratchet on there. So I got a 1/4 inch ratchet with a wobble set to loosen. Pull our radiator back just a tad. And that's enough to do it. I'm going to drop it in the coolant, watch. Nope, I got it. I got it. Haha. All right, we'll take this one off. Store them right there for right now. Now we're just going to come through and take off this manifold here. Capture any transmission fluid that comes out. Careful of your O-rings here when you take these out. There we go. And that'll let us move those out of the way. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull this up and out. There we go. Not too bad. All right, so now that our shroud's out of the way, we can get a better view back here for sure. We're going to continue removing our radiator so we can really diagnose what's going on back here. And I can tell you right now, look at that. That certainly feels like a crack or a split right here. But we're going to know more when we get it out of here. All right, anyway, don't mind this. That's just our transmission fluid because this is the manifold we had pulled off. As soon as we get the radiator out, we don't have to worry about these lines being in the way. We'll reconnect this. And then when we're all done and we get everything back together, we'll make sure to refill our trans fluid. We're going to have to remove this piece, but that's actually part of what holds on our front condenser. Well, that's our problem right now, is we need to find a way to support the condenser, because the condenser is actually mounted onto the radiator, and the radiator is what bolts to the frame of the vehicle. So that's why the book calls for actually recovering the Freon out of the AC, or the R134A, because you're going to disconnect this, disconnect that, and this whole thing would come out as an assembly. Well, that's not how we're going to do it. We're going to leave this connected so we don't have to touch our AC system. These should be tighter than they are, so we're going to tighten them. And essentially all you got to do is get a flat bar of some kind. I've actually used a nice heavy-duty curtain hanger, curtain rod. And then just enough that you can go from here over to here. And once you got that taken care of, so I guess that reminds me I've got to go ahead and plug these back in before we pull the radiator. What that'll allow you to do is slide your condenser up out of these brackets. It'll hang on its own. It might hang a little bit further than it should, but it'll just be supported by this piece up here, and it won't cause you to stress these lines. And then you can go ahead and slide your radiator out from behind it. And that way you don't have to recover your AC, crack it open, and then have to vacuum it out later. It's a nice time saver. Okay, so here's what I found. I had this little piece of aluminum stock. This is going to be plenty strong. And what we can do is zip tie it up here. It's going to give us plenty of length to go ahead and zip tie against here, against these ears. And so we actually don't necessarily have to reconnect the transcooler lines. We want to make sure they're out of the way from our radiator removal. First things first, if this thing's loose, go ahead and zing them back in, make them nice and tight. That and like this. Okay. All right, so now that these are tight, that's going to be much better. Okay, so we'll just come in with a couple zip ties. I feel like these aren't heavy duty enough zip ties. Hence why we're doubling up on them. To slide that through. Okay, now we'll tighten these up. Maybe I should have done it like that. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we got that right there like that. Let's go ahead and take this bolt out. Oops, don't want to tighten it. There we go. All right, now that that's done, all right, this will just slide off. And then we can take our zip ties. Go through here. We'll just daisy chain them. Like so. Okay, there's one. Let's do this side. There we go. Now our condenser is held with those zip ties. So I'm going to go ahead and double up each side because I don't want these zip ties to break. If they do, there's a backup. That way it's not just dangling by one string of them. All right, so what you're going to want to do as well, once you get this situated, you need to come up from the bottom, and there's brackets that the condenser sits in on the bottom of the radiator, so pop out on either side, and that'll free up your condenser. Once your condenser is free from your radiator assembly, go ahead and lift it straight up. It's a very tight fit. Luckily it's pretty light. You can reach back and move your trans lines out of the way. Lower the radiator hose, and I'm still making a mess. But I cranked this damn thing. There we go. Strain it out the rest of the way. Okay. We got a little bit of cleanup work to do. All right, so our entire front end of the Jeep's pretty much blown apart. We've got cable ties hanging off it, but the good news is our radiator's removed and we didn't have to pull out our AC condenser. So I hope you learned a little bit about something. This is just the removal stage. We actually don't have a replacement radiator right now. We're going to go ahead and get one and replace it the next time we work on it. We'll just kind of store this in the garage for the time being. The main reason was I wanted to pull the radiator out and diagnose what was actually wrong with it. And we're going to show you on the other camera, we do have a split side tank. So we're going to go ahead and show you that. And we'll go ahead and get a new radiator, get it installed, and we'll be good to go. So, but for now, that's it. We'll catch up in just a bit. All right, just a couple close-up items. So again, I did reattach our manifold there so we don't leak any more transmission fluid. And as you can see, we only lost a tiny bit, so we'll replace that when we're all said and done. Okay, this is our piece of aluminum stock that I had. You can use a curtain rod, pretty much anything that's strong enough to hold that up long term. A couple cable ties, and that's going to hold that up nicely. All right, so real quick, here's our radiator that we took out, and we're doing some diagnostics on it. And sure enough, just like we suspected, look at this split on our side tank. So this is where it was leaking fluid. So that's it. We'll get a new radiator, and we'll go ahead and get it installed. In the meantime, I'm going to clean up, we'll pack it in, and as soon as we get our new part, we'll continue this and get this wrapped up.